Okay, today we're not just talking about another data plan. We're going to build the exact strategic blueprint that top consultants use to make sure their projects deliver real, measurable value. This is the framework that turns data from a cost center into a serious competitive advantage. So let's dive right in.
So let's just start with a really critical question. In a world full of complex projects, you've got brilliant people, advanced analytics. What is the one simple oversight that time and time again just completely kills these projects before they even get off the ground?
And there it is. The number one mistake is just diving in head first, grabbing all the data you can to see what's out there. It feels productive, right? But it's actually a direct path to bloated datasets, wasted effort, and honestly some dangerously wrong conclusions. It's basically like setting sail without a map, a compass, or a destination in mind. So over the next few minutes, we are going to build the framework that stops that from happening. First, we're going to lay out the business case, the why this is so critical. And then we'll walk through a really practical 7-step process, the how, so you can build and execute a flawless data collection plan every single time. So let's build that business case. Why is a formal data plan so absolutely essential? Look, this isn't about bureaucracy or just ticking a box on a project plan. It's about fundamentally changing how we think about data collection, moving it from some low-level task to a core strategic activity that actually drives success.
A really well-structured plan delivers a clear return on investment in 3 distinct areas. And we're going to use a classic consulting principle here, MEIS. It stands for Mutually Exclusive, Collectively Exhaustive. It's just a fancy way of saying we've covered all the bases with no overlap. This is how you transform data from a potential liability into a high-value strategic asset.
And you can see how this breaks down perfectly here. First up, at the top, strategic focus. A plan forces you to define what you're asking before you start. That means you don't waste precious time, budget, and brainpower chasing data that doesn't matter. Second, data integrity. This one is non-negotiable. Your plan ensures your conclusions are built on a solid foundation of accurate, reliable data, not on sand. And third, project feasibility. It keeps your project grounded in reality. It forces you to ask, hey, can we actually get this data before you're 6 months deep into a project that's doomed to fail? And this quote from Charlie Munger just captures the mindset perfectly. A data collection plan is the ultimate act of intellectual honesty. You're formally acknowledging what you don't yet know, and you're creating a structured, rigorous process to find the answers. That's where real strategic wisdom begins.
Okay, so we have firmly established the why. Now let's get into the how. We're going to build out the 7-step success framework. I want you to think of this as your repeatable, scalable process for getting data collection right on any project of any size.
So here are the 7 steps we're going to cover. We start with identifying the right questions, then we find available data, determine its form, quantify what we need, define how we're going to measure it, decide on a sampling strategy, and finally, select the right tools to display it. We're going to do a deep dive into the most important parts so you can start using this right away.
Let me be absolutely clear here. Step 1 is everything. It is the foundation that the entire project is built on. You have to start with the business questions you're trying to answer. What's your hypothesis? What decision is this data going to help you make? If you get this right, you avoid the 2 most expensive mistakes, collecting the wrong data or collecting the right data the wrong way.
So how do you make sure you're asking high-value questions? Well, you use a checklist like this one. Run every single question you have through this filter. Is it directly tied to your project goals? Is it actually feasible to collect? Time, budget, effort. Does it consider other things that might influence the results? Will the answer give you real insight, or is it just another number? And critically, can you trace it back to a specific input, process, or output? This kind of rigor up front is what separates game-changing insights from just distracting noise. And here's a pro tip for this stage, inspired by the great Daniel Kahneman. Go find people who disagree with you. Actively seek out the smartest person who thinks your core premise is wrong, and just listen. It is the absolute fastest way to pressure test your assumptions and avoid the blind spots that can sink your whole project before you've even collected a single data point.
All right, so we've got our laser-focused questions. Now we need to get really specific about the data itself. In this section, we're going to cover the 2 fundamental types of data, and we'll tackle that age-old question, how much is enough?
Okay, it's really crucial to understand the 2 basic forms your data can take. As you see here, on one side, we have continuous data. This is anything you measure on a scale, think time, temperature, money. And on the other side, discrete data. This is stuff you count. Things like the number of errors or a simple yes-no, pass-fail. Now, why does this matter so much?
because the type of data you have directly controls what kind of statistical analysis and charts you can use later on. Get this wrong, and your whole analysis could be invalid.
Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question I get on every single project. How much data do we really need to be confident in what we're seeing?
The answer isn't some magic number. It's a strategic principle. You need just enough data for a real, statistically significant pattern to emerge from all the random noise. And for a lot of projects, measuring everything, the entire population, is either impossible or just way too expensive. And that's where a smart sampling strategy comes in. I mean, think about it. A political pollster doesn't call every single voter, right? They analyze a representative sample, and from that, they can make really sound judgments about the whole country, saving a ton of time and money.
So we have our questions, we've defined our data, now we get to the execution phase. This is where the rubber meets the road, defining exactly how we are going to measure our data and, just as important, how we're going to show it to people so they can see the insights.
Your data's integrity lives or dies right here. For consistent, reliable measurements, you need these 4 things. 1. A crystal clear operational definition, so that 2 different people will measure the exact same thing the exact same way. 2. Your specification limits, which are based on what your customer actually finds acceptable. 3. A defined target value. What does good actually look like? And finally, you have to prove your measurement system itself is reliable. You can use tools like a Gauge R&R study to prove that your measuring tool isn't the source of the problem. You want to be measuring the process, not the noise from your own equipment.
And once you have that clean, reliable data, how do you actually display it? Well, this simple guide connects your goal directly to the right tool. If you want to see how data is changing over time, you use a run chart or a control chart. If you want to understand how a whole is divided into its parts, like what are the top reasons for customer complaints, a Pareto chart is your absolute best friend. And if you just want to see the shape and spread of your data, nothing beats a good old histogram. Using the right tool makes the insight practically jump off the page. So we've now built the entire framework, from the business case all the way to the final chart. So let's boil this all down to the one core idea you really need to walk away with. This is all about fundamentally reframing your entire approach to data. This quote from Nate Silver just perfectly captures the hidden danger of unplanned data collection. See, when you just go out and gather what's easy or what's obvious, you are operating entirely inside your own bubble, inside your existing assumptions. A strategic data plan does the exact opposite. It's a systematic tool for exploring the unfamiliar, for forcing you and your team to think about possibilities you would have otherwise completely missed.
So, here's the bottom line. A data collection plan is not a task. It's not administrative overhead. It is the strategic blueprint for success. It is the single most reliable predictor of whether a data-driven project is going to deliver amazing value or if it's just going to end in a swamp of irrelevant numbers. And so I'll leave you with this final challenging question. As you head into your next initiative, your next big project, ask yourself this: are you going to be merely collecting data, or are you going to be executing a strategy? The choice, and of course the outcome, is yours.